On this week's episode of Circles Off, we are joined by a fascinating guest. His name's Antonino De Rosa. He started as a Magic Cards professional player. Went to a sportsbook trader, now bets professionally. His story is insane. Lots of great stuff on this week's episode. Stay tuned. Circles Off starts now.
Come on, let's go!
Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 127, right here on the Circles Off YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola, joined by Johnny from betstamp.
I'm back. 2-week break.
Yep.
Nice to be back, Rob.
Yep.
Couple of banger episodes.
Nice tan
between.
you got there.
Thank you very much, sir.
127.
All right. So this guy was player in the NHL that was growing up. I'm going to name him Alexei Kovalev.
Yeah. How do you remember Kovalev 20? I was going to say Kovalev.
So Kovalev was just the type of player where he wasn't that good, but then some games you'd watch him, you'd be like, this guy's incredible. But then you look at the end of the year, he wasn't that good. He was all right.
He
but
just
he had
haunted
some
the
moments.
Leafs, man. Power plays against the Leafs. This guy must have scored 1 million goals in his career. I'm just floored that you started with Alex Kovalev and not Leafs legend
Daryl Sittler.
Yeah.
Daryl Sittler.
Okay, Sittler obviously.
Also Frank Mahovlich.
Frank Mahovlich, yeah, there's 227s hung in the rafters there. Daryl Sittler, 10-point game. Listen, he did score 10 points at the time. I would urge everybody, if you ever want to make an argument of today's hockey versus back in the day, go watch Daryl Sittler's 10-point game. Let's just say he wouldn't have scored 10 points if I was playing in net. And I am not a goalie. I'm a forward.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. You guys want Johnny, you can't be right. You can't be serious about it. Go watch the clip. You go watch it. You let me know for yourself.
I think we've actually put this clip in a show description before, but we might as well put it in there again. It's actually hilarious. Not to do, it's a feat. It's definitely a feat to accumulate that many points. But when the goalie is not even standing in the middle of the net on like half of the shots, or is so far out that it creates an angle that he might as well not be in the net, it's actually hysterical.
Also, I will provide a hot take. I do think that record will be broken. Most people think that's an untouchable record. I think it will be broken.
All right.
Maybe not right away, but scoring is going to just like have a boost in 1 year, and there's going to be like a 12-goal game, and a buddy's going to pop 11 points. It's probably going to be someone not even that good. Like Sam Gagner got 8 points.
Yeah, it could be. It could just be like a random night where somebody does it. There's a lot of good 27s in baseball. Mike Trout wears 27. Giancarlo Stanton wears 27. But I will never forget number 27 used to patrol the outfield. Back in the day, in the Rogers Center, or was Skydome at the time, or Rogers Center, whatever it was. I'll tell you who it was, because I would buy season tickets, first row, behind the visiting team bullpen.
Saying this was a outfielder on the Jays.
Not on the Jays.
Oh, okay.
But I used to buy visiting tickets behind the bullpen. First row. I used to chirp Jonathan Papelbon in the bullpen all the time. He used to give it back to the fans. It was amazing. Great experience. When the Red Sox were in town, I used to get those tickets. Trot Nixon was the outfielder there, chirping him nonstop. He'd turn around. He'd like give you the finger in the glove. You know, he's like hiding it a little bit. Great stuff. But one guy I chirped for an entirety that never, ever reacted was Vladimir Guerrero Sr.
Wow.
27 in the outfield. I would always go see their games whenever they were in town, just ripping Vlad. Like I was the obnoxious, like I'm a young kid, drinking a lot at games, completely obnoxious, loud. And then finally one guy just comes up to me. He's like, hey, you know this guy doesn't understand any English, right? I'm like, oh, you know what? Makes a lot of sense. Because in between inning, a lot of times, like in between pitching changes or whatever, the right fielder will come over to the bullpen and he'll just chat it up with the guys that are in the bullpen, which is, I'm standing right over it. So I'm like, fuck you, Vlad, you stink. I'm going on, and like guys never reacting to anything. One guy's like, yeah, you should probably pick another guy to chirp. He doesn't speak any English. I'm like, yeah.
Man, they should have thrown you out.
They should.
But speaking of who wouldn't throw you out,
I love what you did there. Pinnacle Sportsbook will not throw you out because they are the world's sharpest sportsbook, and they accept all players. They don't limit you. They don't ban you. They take your action. It's a huge benefit to have. If you're in Ontario, bet smart, bet Pinnacle, your trusted sportsbook for the past 25 years, and use code HAMMER when signing up, as it does help support Circles Off, and the Hammer Betting Network. Code HAMMER. You must be 19 plus. Available in Ontario, not available in the U.S. Please play responsibly. And we're going to talk more about Pinnacle on the show because our next guest used to be a trader there. We now welcome in our guest this week on Circles Off. You can follow him on Twitter at @DeRosa_Antonino. If you haven't figured it out, he's Antonino De Rosa. His Twitter profile says sports trader and NBA enthusiast. I think reducing him to just that would be doing him a massive disservice because he has a very interesting past. You might have heard him on Be Better Bettors with Spanky before. We want to get into some of his background and a lot more on this week's episode of Circles Off. Antonino, thanks for joining us.
Wait, hold up. Antonino, the fellow paisano.
Fellow paisano. We have to say that as well. We have 3 Italians here, and then producer Zach, who's about as white as it gets with that mustache.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm a big fan of you guys' work, so it's nice to be here.
Appreciate that. We didn't pay him to say that either. We didn't pay him to say that, which is nice. Antonino, I didn't know much about you. We've interacted on Twitter before through DMs, just like over the years randomly. But I did listen to your episode of Be Better Bettors on with Spanky, and I was fascinated by your background. Not just the sports betting space, but where it started. I grew up, I was heavily into Magic the Gathering, Pokemon as well, like other trading card games. And I didn't know this at first, but you started on the Magic the Gathering scene doing like actual professional tournaments and stuff like that before getting into everything else from the sports betting world. So walk me through it. You're an Italian guy. You come over to the U.S. How did this all start for you? And then how did you transition from Magic to sports betting?
All right. I'll try not to be too long. But my fascination with cards started as a young kid. I used to play Scopa and Briscola with my grandma.
Oh, there you go. You ever play some Trisette as well? Or what?
Yeah, Trisette as well. But then, my elementary years, I would watch my parents stay at poker night, and I would just sit behind my mom and my dad watching these old people play, and I was like, man, these guys are terrible. So I was always fascinated with card games. In high school, I got into Magic via some friends, and I started playing local tournaments, and then when you win those, you get invited to bigger tournaments all across the world, basically. And I was on the pro scene for about 6-7 years, end of high school through college. Got to travel the world a ton. It was really fun. There was not that much money, in it. I think my biggest score was $25K, but for a 19-year-old, that was pretty good. I got to go to Japan a bunch of times. I got to go to Europe a bunch of times. It was really fun.
Just to interrupt you really quickly, with the Magic stuff, out of curiosity, was your original allure to it the actual game itself, or was it the cards as like a collectible? Because for me, I first started as a collectibles guy years before I even started playing the game, and then once I played the game, I was like, oh, this is really addicting.
To be honest, I could care less about the lore. I didn't care that a goblin did this and an elf did that, or a dragon, dragon has to spitfire, whatever it is. My lore was that it's just literally a card game that you got to use your brain versus other people and try to outwit them. Magic is, I always tell people, it's a mixture between poker and chess. It's not, the best player doesn't always win, because in chess, that's what it does. And there is still some luck element of the deck. But there's a lot of strategy, not only while you're playing, but also leading up to the tournament, because you have thousands and thousands of cards, and you have to choose your 60-card deck to go and take to the tournament. And that takes a lot of preparation, thinking about what other people will do. So I always enjoyed that aspect of it.
So a lot of game theory involved, just trying to predict who your competitors are going to put in their decks and planning against all that.
Just like sports betting.
Antonino, are you good at poker and chess? You mentioned those two.
Chess, I never got into it. I'm not a big fan. I did play poker right out of college in 2003. I did a year where I was grinding sit and goes, but I basically stopped once I got my first real job.
And the first real job being?
All right. So my first real job was, I don't know if you guys ever collected baseball cards. I worked for a company called Upper Deck. I worked there for 3 years. They had a division where we make card games for kids. So I worked a bit on Yu-Gi-Oh. We used to have a card game called Versus System, which is with superheroes. I don't know if you guys ever played World of Warcraft, the video game. They also had a trading card game that we did. So I worked there for a few years as a game designer.
That's awesome. And then Rob and I were just talking about it. My generation was the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So yeah, did you name the cards or what?
No, like our most job there, Konami would make the cards. We would have to make them because they make them for Japanese people. We would have to localize the cards. So Japan has this really weird, I don't know, I'll give you an example. In Japan, the best shows are little kid finds out he has superpowers, kills his mom and his dad, then goes to do evil things. In America, little kid finds out he has superpowers and goes after the bad guys that killed his dad and his mom. So like we had to grab a lot of this Japanese stuff to make it so where the European and the American kids would actually like it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Rob and I were just talking before. He asked me if I played Magic. I said I was more Yu-Gi-Oh. We're talking about some of the names, so maybe you were translating them. I know the main Yu-Gi-Oh cards you have, they're pretty simple. It's like red eyes, black dragon, blue eyes, white dragon. They're pretty solid. So maybe you're on the translating team, moving them from Japanese to English.
No, I was just localizing it. And then one day it all changed. I got a phone call from Pinnacle, and they asked me if I would want to go work there and be a sports trader for their company. I thought it was a joke. I kind of hung up the phone. They're like, you want to come to Curacao? I'm like, where is that? My mother was like, hey, if you go and work for this company, please don't go knock on people's doors if they owe them money. All these horror stories that you might hear. But anyways, during 2007, I think is when Pinnacle stopped giving American customers. Yep. So they kept all the American customers out. And the story is basically there used to be a Magic player, used to be Pinnacle for millions of dollars. And Pinnacle hired him and said, listen, since you can't bet with us anymore, how about we still give you what you're winning every year and you just help us understand why you're beating us. So this very autistic guy, super smart, but very, geniuses who are thinking about to save the world instead of brushing their teeth and having social interactions. Yep. He went over there and the very first thing he says, the reason why I beat all you guys is because the people behind the computer are not that smart. And the guy looked at them, the owner of Pinnacle, and he said, where do we find people as smart as you? And he crackled and he says, no one is as smart as me. But there's this game called Magic the Gathering. The people who are good at it, they're, critical thinkers and, they understand game theory. You should look into that. So the Pinnacle owners, what they did is they grabbed the Magic the Gathering, world rankings, and they literally started calling the top guys one after the other. I was at the time, the 7th or 8th person that got that phone call. And they hired about 40 of us. Wow. And we all went to this island, and it was awesome, because we were all young. None of us really understood the job. I didn't even know what a sports bet was, really. I didn't know what an over and under was. I didn't know anything. I remember the very first day they put me in front of the computer and they said, you got to trade this soccer game live. And I kept putting half a goal favorites instead of quarter goal favorites because I didn't understand that there was a difference. It was nice because we had this camaraderie, we all try to get each other to be better. We always would ask each other for help, and we kind of all grew together to, what Pinnacle is today.
That's honestly an amazing story, because thinking about the evolution in the betting space and where we're at in 2023 now, I think the obvious solution for any sports book, for the vast majority of sports books who are just getting beat by a player, is going to be like, yeah, we don't want the action anymore, and we're just not going to keep going down the line and just cut people off. And this is an innovative way to continue forward as a sports book, but do it in a manner that's untraditional. It's very high risk, right, for a sports book to go out of their way and be like, yeah, forget about the existing guys who've traded sports forever. We're going to bring in these critical thinkers, game theory guys, and reinvent the wheel. And it's only 16 years ago, but it almost feels like it's 100 years ago when you tell that story.
Yeah, it was amazing because they had trust in us, and we repaid them with a lot of hard work. But it was amazing because they were one of those companies that the only thing they knew was American sports at the time. So once they lose all their Americans, they had to do something to make it. So we started offering tons of soccer, and we started offering a bunch of tennis. Eventually, esports, which blew up. Esports basically comes from Magic players. We would sit around watching, League of Legends on YouTube while working, and we're like, let's offer some lines. And then all these people will start betting, and we were like, whoa, people like to bet this. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, and they did it. And Pinnacle is a great company. They didn't fire any of the guys that were already there. They gave them other jobs, or we will work with them, elbow by elbow kind of thing. But after a few years, all the Magic players were all the managers of all the different sports. At the end, Magic player was actually head of the sports book, Marco Blume. I don't know if you guys ever heard of him.
Very familiar with Marco. Yeah.
Yeah. So they and then they also went into different roles. We started an R&D team. They started a math team. Some of them started programming. So they kind of infiltrated themselves all throughout the company.
When you got that call from Pinnacle, were you did you already have a family, like wife and kids or anything? Or
no, okay. I just had bought a house in San Diego, and I was like, should I do this? And so they flew me to Curacao for a couple of days, and I realized it was a real island and a real job, and then I was like, you know what? If I'm not going to do something like this when I'm young, when am I ever going to do it? So I just took a leap of faith and went with it. Where there was other stuff, with Upper Deck, it was a good company, but it wasn't all that great. And then I'm like, man, video games are going to take over card games, which they did. So I don't see too much of a green pastures here at Upper Deck. So that's why I did it.
Yeah, interesting. Where did you go after? So the Pinnacle thing happens. Did you then go to other sports books? I know now, and I want to eventually get to it, that your betting is significantly. And ever since we did the Simon Hunter episode, I hate throwing out the word syndicate, but I think you're synonymous with running a betting syndicate now. So
it's syndicate is just a funny word. I don't really know what it means, but yeah, we run a betting group, and I can explain more what we do. When I left Pinnacle, I didn't work for a little bit, but then I had the opportunity to go work for Planetech.
With Adam Bjorn.
Adam Bjorn, yeah. So they basically run the odds for Betcris, which is another big, sports book. I had the opportunity. They asked me, since my wife was Filipino, they wanted to open a Filipino office where they would have a trading floor there while Costa Rica was sleeping, for somebody to run their sports book. So I went there and I basically did that. It was me and this Australian guy. We went there. We started this office, about 60 traders, which I think is still currently going strong. And they have an office there, and they get to, I don't know how much you guys follow, but Betcris back in the day, even 5-6 years ago or 10 years ago, they didn't offer all the tennis leagues, all the soccer leagues, all the basketball that is in NBA. And now they offer everything. And a lot of that has to do with Adam went the vision to start an office in the Philippines to have 24-hour coverage to be able to take bets on all this other stuff that people do want to bet.
Yeah, that's interesting. Was it Manila based in Philippines, or?
Yeah, it was right in Manila, in a little city called BGC, which is right next to, it's Metro Manila, but it's called BGC.
Had you been out to Manila beforehand, before starting that?
I did. In 2010, Pinnacle sent me there for about a year because they also opened an office there. And at the time, we wanted our live traders to be in Manila because it was a really good time zone. The games, the NBA, the baseball games start at 7 a.m. there. Yep. So me and a couple of the Pinnacle guys, we flew over to Manila, and we trained, and we opened this other office there as well for them.
I'd been out to Manila once before, when I was consulting for some sports books as well. And for an Italian, I'm not an Italian guy. I'm an Italian-Canadian guy. My parents are born in Italy. I'm born here. But it was very much a culture shock for me, especially the driving, man. I don't know. It's just like crazy how like people you drive in North America and you got lanes. And people,
not there.
They're not there. It's just everyone's just out on the road, and you look over to the person that it's crazy, different.
Yeah, Manila is really nice. The people are super nice. Everyone's always friendly and smile on their face. It's got their downside being a third world country, but it's nice too. The people who work there, they're hard workers, and any company that wants to open something over there, I recommend it because the people are really good workers.
Are you still involved with Planetech at all?
I am. So I was in Manila for about 4 years. I decided I have little kids now. I wanted them to grow up back in the States. So when I told Adam and Planetech that I was leaving Manila, of course, they didn't want me to be involved with trading anymore because I'm in America. So I am consulting for them. I work for the R&D and math team. So basically they have a big team that makes sports modeling tools for traders, like tools that help you profile customers and tools to give you live lines and all that type of stuff. And basically I kind of work as a bridge between. They make the tool, I test it first, then I give it to the traders. The traders test it, they tell me how they want to fix it, then I go back to them. And that's kind of what I do in a consulting kind of way with them.
Very nice. So you said you're going to get more into the actual betting group that you're running right now.
All right. So it all started with at Pinnacle. By the time I left, I was a NBA live trader. We used to trade when we started NBA live there. We would do it by hand, no model. We had a rinky-dinky spreadsheet that barely worked, but it was mostly by hand. So when I left Pinnacle, while I was working at Pinnacle, I never made a wager in my life. I know it might be hard to people believe that, but it's the truth. And when I left Pinnacle, I'm like, man, there's so many inefficiencies in the market. Let's see if I can find a way to bet these. And something hit me. Like while I was working at Pinnacle, I always thought that if you had a winning wager, it would be easy to bet. But as we all know, that's not really the case. It's harder almost to get money down than to actually have a winning wager. So I hooked up with fellow ex-Magic players, 2 guys from Canada. I knew that my partner was involved in sports betting because he would post things on Facebook sometimes. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, what do you do in sports betting? And he explained to me that he had a bunch of, off-market accounts like PPHs and Buckeye skins and whatever else. I didn't even know those existed while I was at Pinnacle, to be honest. and he gives them out to people who bet. So we started betting basketball live, and it was going real well. And slowly but surely, they kept bringing us more accounts to people, and more accounts and more accounts. And after a while, we realized that we were only betting basketball live inside these accounts. And we were like, why don't we find people to bet the other sports that we might not be good at betting? So what we do now is we run, I don't know, a group, let's call it, where we originate a lot of our own stuff, but we bet a lot for other people. I hear Rob says I bet that I've bet Rob's bets many times. I think we work with the same people. So, we give our accounts to a group to bet American sports. We bet our own basketball live. We bet some of our own tennis and our own soccer. And we also bet tennis and soccer for other people when, we're no good if you're looking for top price, really, because as we all know, PPHs and Buckeyes are not that. We help groups that can maximize their liquidity to be able to get down as much money as possible. So they come to us, and we try to do that for them. So a lot of people will ask us, can you bet this tennis guy? Here's the price. And we try to bet as much as we can and then give them their share, and we keep a little bit for ourselves as how it works for the business.
Of course. If you had to estimate, Antonino, what percentage of that split is you betting your own stuff versus moving on behalf of other people? What would you say that is?
I think it's about 60-40 our stuff. We bet a lot of basketball live. We just don't only bet the NBA. We also bet a lot of EuroLeague and Italian basketball, WNBA, college basketball. I mean, there's just tons of basketball.
Are those leagues even available on the PPH skins?
They are. They have this thing called, once it becomes live, it goes into this thing where it's called dynamic lines or something. There's all kinds of that stuff. And
not bad.
Yeah. So we bet a lot of that. And, obviously we grab the low-hanging fruits when, Pinnacle's at 6 and these other websites are 7.5 and a live basketball game. We bet that. But we also have a model that tells us what the line should be. And, whenever there's a discrepancy, you tend to bet. And then as we grew, now we have actually shop runners all over Italy and France that actually bet a lot of our pregame stuff too. So we're growing as, it's so hard to get money down, as we all know. So you kind of have to evolve a bit and, try.
So I didn't put this on the run sheet beforehand. I hope I don't catch you off guard with this question, but I think it's important. Can you beat Pinnacle in NBA Live?
Yes.
How easily?
Not that easy.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I don't even think that my model is better than Pinnacle's. Maybe it is a little bit, but they have the VIG, so it has to be better by a lot.
Right.
But I don't know if you guys ever watch these basketball games. The lines are constantly moving, right? Like any bet really that goes into Pinnacle will move the line, and most of the times we find value. Is when, we're opposing the public. And that's basically with all of our live. We bet baseball live as well and basketball live. And those are the times you find the most value. Another thing that, people don't realize in live, there's so many different opportunities, right? Like in pregame, there's some number. It will move throughout the day, maybe once or twice a big move. And then you have, you can reset like, hey, can I make another bet? But in live, every single timeout, every single dead ball, you might have an opportunity to bet. And while the game is going on, Pinnacle's taking bets on one side A or side B. By the time it gets to that timeout, like that number might be value because they've taken so many bets from the last time out that every time a bet moves, take a bet, the line does move. But in the perfect world, I would not even want to bet Pinnacle. And I would not even want to bet Chris, because those companies are smart enough to actually reverse engineer their bets. And then you don't actually ever get value anymore. So we try not to bet those places. We bet them sometimes, but we try not to bet them for that reason.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, that definitely makes sense. When you were on the other side of the counter there working at Pinnacle, again, don't give out any info but you mentioned NBA live trading. Like, how many people were kind of like you now betting and could actually win on live betting?
There was a few, very small percentage, but there was one specific bettor that was actually crushing us. And then one day, Pinnacle, that smart guy that shakes that I told you about earlier at the beginning, he said, I know what I'm going to do. And he went and grabbed that guy's every single wager he's ever made. He matched it to the game state data, so the game situation of every single bet, what the score, what the ball, whatever. And they created a model to basically reverse engineer what this guy was doing.
Did they successfully do that?
They successfully did it. And like, obviously, the guy still was winning, but instead of holding 5%, it went down to 2% and a lot less value. And a lot of the trader's job, once we had that model, was, can we post a line where this guy does not actually bet? And then if that guy didn't bet, it was a success,
Yeah.
Like
measuring your success on whether or not you're actually taking action from that guy.
Yeah, because when the guy didn't bet, you knew the line was okay. Because if the line wasn't okay, you would have bet.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's amazing. Pretty funny.
But you hear from Antonino himself, like the people who message in the Q&A and are like, oh, Rob, why don't you post like all of your NHL bets somewhere? It's bad enough when you're already betting into a book, because every bet that you make with the book is giving them information. Now imagine you put every bet you make. People are always like, oh, all these pros are looking for clout, or, we can't tell that they're a pro. You're never going to be able to, because no pro wants to post their bets publicly. As soon as you do that and you give someone a entire history of what you're betting, it's actually not that hard for people to start to figure things out.
Yeah. And also with sports betting in general, a lot of times you will find value on the same team, for a couple of weeks in a row. Like you don't want, like we had this, I heard you, I only go to say things that I hear you guys have talked about in the past. One time you talked about this group in Panama was betting baseball in one of your shows. And those guys were really, really good. And our job as a trader, I was trading baseball at the time, was to try and figure out which pitcher they would bet on and against, So like, those are things that smart traders are actually doing. They don't just show up at their desk and move the lines when bets are coming in. They're actually trying to predict, okay, we have these 3 or 4 good customers, where are they going to come most likely today based on their previous bets?
That's being proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah. And a lot of it is the reason why I enjoy trading so much is like a game. You're trying to predict what other people are doing. You're battling with the person. So like you're deciding how much you're going to let him bet. To tell you guys another story, there used to be a guy who used to bet NBA. In the past, he's won millions and millions. But toward the end, he got so greedy that whenever time you gave him the same price, he would always rebet it. But what he didn't realize is the reason why I was giving him the same price is because I had information that one bet that he's making is not as good as his other ones. So the time I'm giving him the same price over and over, he's betting 4 or 5 units. And the times that his bet is actually really good, he's never getting a second bet. So, this guy went from being one of the best sports bettors in the world to being broke. And, it's kind of like a game, and that's what it's, and I feel that as betting too. When I'm betting, to me, it's a game. The traders are putting their opinionated line, especially in live. They're putting their opinionated live based on the action they're getting. And now I get to decide if I want to bet it or not.
I love that story, honestly, just because myself as a bettor, there's no worse feeling in the world than clicking a max bet on a sharp site and seeing the line just come right back in your face or not move at all.
You got to jam it again, buddy. Double
click.
For me,
I never jam it. I never jam it again.
You should not.
And you should not. But some people are just, there's like an arrogance about them. They're like, oh, you want to serve me the same line? Sure. I'm going to hit it harder. But no, that's a great story. I'm curious, Antonino. I mean, if you never got a call from Pinnacle out of the blue because you're a Magic player, do you think you would have ever found your way to sports betting?
No, zero chance. I would have stuck in maybe I would be working for some studio as a game designer somewhere. I got a finance degree in college, and very quickly I realized I didn't really want a normal corporate life. So game design felt that was really fun. So I think I would still be doing something like that.
How long ago did in terms of timeline did you make the jump to the professional sports betting group?
About 5-6 years ago, where I can say that we're betting a lot of games and a lot of volume. So yeah, about 5-6 years ago is my guess.
So the reason I asked that is because the sports betting landscape, or the world of sports betting, it's constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
Due to regulations, technology, availability of data. College basketball, Ken Pom changed the world for a while. Then it became this mass thing, and now all of a sudden no one has an edge using Ken Pom. So I'm curious, your operation 5 years ago relative to where it's at now, would you say it's substantially different, or have you guys been able to
way different? We had to get a bot created, as one of the simple things. And even now, a lot of these PPH world, they're putting freezes in the accounts and delays. So, I remember when they started putting captchas when you're trying to make a bet, and then you have to get created a bot that beats the captcha. I'm I never understood. I'm a sports book that wants to make it hard for people to bet. I don't understand. Why would I ever want? Sometimes we have to put a captcha while betting live, which is insane.
Well, they want to make it hard for you to bet, Antonino, not for everyone else.
Yeah, but even if I am just some normal guy, I don't want to do a captcha that pick the bicycles or whatever before I get to make.
You never get those right either, eh? You never get those right.
On those, pick all the crosswalks. It's is this a crosswalk? This is barely going on to the next one?
I fill them out real quick, and I'm always damn, are you kidding me? And then you just go to the next one, and then second try, I got to be careful. I don't want to miss this captcha. I don't want to fail the second try.
But then even geolocation, for instance. It's a big one. where before we could get a lot of Bet365 accounts created and stuff like that. Now we can't really beat the geolocation. Yeah, you kind of do have to evolve with the times and the data as well. If every year, you have to get the buy data if you want to keep your model up to standards. It's just I don't know, it's just part of the job, I guess.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, there's even on the data side of things, sometimes you have to buy data just to figure out whether or not it's even worthwhile and that can be a pretty big sunk cost at some point.
Random question that I got to ask here. All right. Do you know anyone that has ever beat online casino? Not like bonuses and stuff like that. Like actually found an online casino.
No.
Not at Pinnacle. Okay.
Not at Pinnacle and not at Planetech, but no.
Fair enough.
I think that there's a French group out there that has had some casino success in the past.
Online, not
online,
physical,
online, but specific games with specific providers where they find something that's broken with the game and then exploit.
I met a guy at Bet Bash 2 years ago. He works for Swan Data.
White Swan.
Bernard. White Swan Data. And he was claiming that they could be casino games.
Yeah.
And they wanted our accounts to try to bet casino games or whatever, but we never really hooked up with them.
Yeah, fascinating.
That's the same group that I've heard of that could potentially beat casino games. Whether or not it's true, I don't know, but if they're looking for accounts for casino, that's probably a decent chance that they can do it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you came into sports betting, you mentioned, you came into the job at Pinnacle without actually having placed a bet. And I assume you weren't actually a fan of any of these sports. Is that correct?
Yeah, not a fan. I liked soccer when Italy would play the national teams.
Del Piero, what kind of timing were we on here?
Del Piero, Gattuso, all those guys, Cannavaro. But Roberto Baggio, maybe when I was much younger. But I got really into sports pretty fast. At Pinnacle, they would have a fantasy baseball league and fantasy basketball league and fantasy NFL league. And I never played any fantasy. I was like, ooh, this is kind of fun. So I got into it pretty good. The NBA now, or any basketball in general, I just love to watch. I'll even watch preseason or WNBA. I think it's a really fun game to watch.
So what I was going to ask was, do you think it was actually a positive for you not knowing sports prior to,
yes,
or a negative?
Yeah, a total positive. And there was Pinnacle actually did this on purpose. They said, you're Italian. We don't want you to work in soccer. We want you to work in American sports. And then they grabbed the Americans and they put those guys into soccer. They actually did it on purpose. They didn't want any people to have any biases. Sometimes I hear people that come here, I have a lot of respect for, Circa, but one of the traders came on your show and was like, yeah, I come in the morning, and I felt he was telling the story that he was using his opinions on how he was moving the lines. And I actually think that's personally bad trading. Customers that you have or betting, especially if you're not kicking out winners, you're paying them to tell you what the line should be. If you're smart enough to know what the line should be, you make a lot more money betting than actually working at these places.
Yeah.
So there was never a time that I would use any of my opinions in any of the trading. The customers tell you a story and you just listen to it.
So it's all numbers based. We had on this topic of the customers and not limiting winners. I know. Did you listen to an episode that we released a few weeks ago?
It was number 121.
Yeah, with the shipper, Ship the Justice, the PointsBet trader, former.
Yeah, I listened to that one.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't listened to that on the broadcast, after you're done with this episode, I would urge you to go back and listen. It was a great one. So Shipper is a former, I think, head of trading at PointsBet, and he did talk in detail about what principles they use and practices to actually limit players and profile players who are going to win and essentially boot them out, limit them to pennies. Antonino was a trader over at Pinnacle where, friends of the show, sponsor of the show, been there before. They don't kick out winners, okay? So Antonino, what I got to ask you then is, in comparison to that episode, what are some things that he made a mention that you guys would actually use for a benefit and keep that player around?
Yeah, I mean, what well, okay. So it's a little complex because I don't know taxes and licensing fees. There's all these hidden costs running a sportsbook in America that I don't really understand. But in the end, the gist of it is if you take sharp action, they're telling you a story. If you have three sharp guys betting all the same side within the VIG, you can probably be pretty safe and move the line a decent amount and get bets on the other side. And if you have enough volume on the way back, you're actually going to be more profitable for the company than you're going to be more profitable for the company than if you didn't have that information. So at Pinnacle, they have a very small hold, right? Minus 105 on both sides. At least that's what it was when I worked there. And a lot of the good traders were holding more than the VIG. And the reason why they were holding more of the VIG was not because of cash out buns and because of same game parlays and whatever else. It's because we were using that information from the bettors to actually decide how much money we wanted to risk for the company and at what prices. It was not this thing like take a bet, move the line, and hopefully you get a bet on the other side. No, it was like, all right, I took a bet at minus 107 and minus 109 from a sharp guy. Like, can I get 10 times that at plus 106 on the other side? Or even plus 107, right? And that's what we used to do all day long, and that's the way you can make more money. Now, I'm assuming if I'm FanDuel and I would have the trading people that work at Pinnacle, they would be way more profitable running a book like that than the way they currently are. But at Pinnacle, you will not find 2,000 props on every game, and you will not find a million other things that these sports books have, and it's because you cannot run a sports book where you don't kick out winners if you have that big of a menu, unless you hired a million people. So that's kind of the two differences. But yeah, what I don't understand is how can their technology not allow them to give people a $1 bet on their shitty props and then let people bet real amount of money on their normal stuff? That's the part I don't understand. Why are these sports books so technology in depth?
But also why they have to limit to $1 instead of $50 or something like that. Just take the $50 bet and use the information. I mean, that's kind of what Shipper was alluding to in that interview as well. And I will say the book that he was, running before, they did limit me. It wasn't to, $1, which is a basic slap in the face. But
it was points bet also. We talked about it on the episode.
But I thought that was a really good interview with Shipper. I think he was very forthcoming. There's like a lot of information to be gleaned from that. But being completely honest, I kind of got a very bad taste from the amount of pride and joy. And I get it. Like, that was his job. His full-time job was to run the trading team and do it in as successful a manner for the company. But the amount of pride and joy he took in like booting winning bettors, it just bothered me. Like, it really rubs me the wrong way. So as someone, Antonino, that used to trade for a sharp book, do you look down on the recreational sportsbook model? When you hear stuff like that, does it bug you at all, or do you just water under the bridge?
Well, like Chipper himself might not have, like, I don't look down on him because he's just doing what, his company's telling him to do. But like, if I worked at PointsBet, I could say, hey guys, this information, like I look down to him as in, how does he now want that challenge to be able to see sharp bets and make the company more money, And that's, the same question goes to FanDuel and DraftKings. If I was a trader there, I'd be pissed. I'm like, I'm smart enough. Like, we want this information. We're going to make tons of money because of this information. But, until they get there technologically, I don't think, like, it's always going to be like this. Like, a lot of these sportsbooks don't even have an auto mover. So sometimes Raz releases a play and they'll get hit, I don't know by how many times. Pinnacle will only get hit once at that number. Same thing with Betcris. So, once you need an auto mover, you need smart people buying, the thing, and you need the ability to give people different limits on different markets.
Do you think you can do it? So you mentioned if you were trading for FanDuel, okay? So if you were trading for FanDuel, and actually I'll back this up. Let's say you own FanDuel. All right, I know it's owned by Flutter, big company, whatever. Let's say you own FanDuel.
I would allow winners, and I would just.
Do you think you'd make more money than the current company?
Yeah, 100%.
Even if you offered the rest of the menu?
No, that I'm not sure about.
So would you would take off the rest of the menu then? See, this is
I
the challenge.
I would take off or have technology that will help me limit the exposure on the rest of the menu.
So if they take off the rest of the menu, then there goes their business model, because the majority of the players they have there are playing there for the SGPs, for the props, for the first touchdown scorers, and to have fun with that. So that's the other thing.
But there has to be a hybrid way. Honestly, there is in the offshore space, right? Not to the same extent, but Bet Online is kind of like the in between. They'll take a big bet. They'll give you a decent size bet on a prop with Prop Builder. It's not crazy, Like I'm not suggesting they're giving, but it's kind of that in between, and they're, I mean, in the offshore space doing fairly well. They seem to still have market share even with the regulation across North America, right? It's not like this hasn't been tried and has failed miserably either. Like that's what bothers me about the space, right? It's one extreme or another.
You think you could trade, Antonino? So you think you can trade like a prop market, for example? Like you could do all the NBA props for the day. How many people would you need on the trading team to turn a profit on those?
Probably 2 to 3 always on.
2 to 3 guys always on. So 3 guys always on. Trading just NBA player props, every prop.
Just NBA. Yeah, they have to be on top of the news. They have to understand how, one player bringing out how it affects all the others. Yeah, 3 people I think would be enough.
So it just doesn't make sense why they wouldn't hire 3 people to be always on and just fix up all these markets, have such a better book.
I couldn't tell you. Like, I know what I would do if I ran a book, and it's just not there right now. And it's like, try to serve all the markets. Why would you not want to?
Well, if Antonino was saying like, oh, we would need at least one player per one trader per game for just the props, then I'd be like, that seems like a lot of power that's needed, a lot of like HR. But if you can do one guy can do, so that means some nights when there's two games on for NBA, one guy.
Yeah, it's one guy
can probably do it.
It's crazy.
Like at Pinnacle, just to give you an idea, on a Saturday of college football, we had 3 guys on. We used to do all the first halves, all the first quarters, all the game, and all the second halves.
And then live another team?
The live was a different team. So, I think 3-4 guys is plenty even on really big cards.
That's super fascinating from my end to actually
agreed.
To actually see, because you really don't understand how much that Pinnacle could, like, I mean, most people won't understand this, what I'm saying on the pod right now, but the fact that there is an auto mover, like Antonino was saying, it limits you from just getting absolutely mashed.
Yep.
And in that, because there's an auto mover and you can take games off the board and you're actually moving your price accordingly based on the profiles. Like, I've never traded for a book, but you can make money booking sharps. It can be done, and it's been done for years with multiple different things. So the fact that the people now taking the largest bets are not doing that is crazy.
There's 2 things I also want to specify. One is, I think FanDuel would be profitable, but a place I have no clue how many points bets gets, or Betfred, or any of these other smaller books. I don't know if they would be profitable taking sharps, because you have to have enough playback, enough volume.
That's a really good point. Like the bigger North American books, FanDuel, DraftKings, like they're getting a ton of volume. There's enough to offset a lot of the sharp action. Some of these smaller books,
they don't have enough.
They're taking like 10K in handle a day. It's like, one bet will put them under.
I heard something like WinBet is taking like 300,000-400,000 across all their sports per day. With that amount of volume, you can't go do anything with that.
Yeah, might as well be a better at that point.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to say is, even sharp books, just to be clear, they don't limit you, but they still kind of limit you if you're doing something funky.
What do you mean by that?
So, let's say there's tons of people out there just always trying to, get one ahead of the sports book. There's people that are betting faster feed. If a sharp sports book realizes you're betting only when, a goal gets pass posted or a home run gets hit, your account will get limited in a way of lots of delay. So when you're trying to make a wager, it spins a lot. If you are a customer who only bets ITF tennis and never bets any major market stuff and you're crushing it, you're probably going to get limited in those markets. So even they don't limit players, they say, but I've seen it. They do limit players sometimes, but only people that, in my opinion, working from that side, they kind of deserve it.
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
like
they're
against the rules of you're essentially violating terms
the pass
of the sports
posting
book.
for sure.
Pass posting
Can't
or like
expect
court
it.
siding, yeah, is what are you gonna do? Like you know what you're getting into when you're placing those bets.
Anthony, how
And
many
what's-
screens you have? How many
When I-
monitors?
When I worked at Pinnacle, we would have 6 big ones.
And how about now? Is it better?
Now it's a better F3.
Wow, so it's a 50%. 50% of the amount of screens from
Well-
bookie to better. Put these stats up.
But yeah, like I know that people get upset. They're like, why every time I make a wager, I get a little spinning wheel every time, in live and all this stuff. Those things, like, we should stop being mad at them. Is because they're only there to, like, because there's so many bad apples out there that ruin it for everybody else, So
It's a form of
they're there.
protection. I mean,
Yeah.
I totally understand that. I don't like there's one thing if you get the spinning circle and then whatever, someone reviews the bet it's another thing if you get the spinning circle when you place and they move the line.
And then you was rejected.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even worse,
Or
they move
give
the
you
line and give you the worst
they give
odds.
you the bet at the worst odds. Like that's criminal. That should never happen.
Well, there's some sports books that, like, you make a wager and then you bet on a team and then the other team scores a 3-pointer and they accept it. But if your team scores a 3-pointer, they've rejected it. But I've never seen that at Pinnacle or Planetech. And so at those two sports books, no one's ever rejecting your bet because they just reject it if the line has changed. They don't pick and choose, when they
don't
accept
free
it
roll
or
you there. They don't free roll you.
they don't do any of that.
As someone who went from the trading world to the sports betting world and betting, I do want to ask you about wagering at high stakes and how that affects like your emotions, basically. If you're going from being purely a trader to now all of a sudden betting this stuff out, and obviously betting a lot because that's the intention, is to make a lot of money, how do you handle yourself in like the inevitable losing streaks or these pressure situations? Because that's got to be tough. Like for someone who's experienced that as a bettor for decades or whatever, you just get used to it. But when you're making that plunge, I'm assuming that's like a crazy experience.
So it's super tough. Obviously, my background in general, when I play Magic, I would play some high leverage matches, at the time only $5,000-$6,000, but it was a lot of money for me. So I kind of learned that pretty fast. At Pinnacle, believe it or not, every single trader, they care so much about their stats, like how much money you win the company or lose the company, even though it affects their bottom line so little. Like, so sometimes, like, if I would lose $300,000-$400,000 in a game that I was trading, I would go home so angry, even though it was none of my money and it didn't matter at all. So it took time, obviously, to get over that. But, as a bettor, you do go in losing streaks. You do lose a lot of money. There's definitely nights where we as a group swing maybe 6 digits. And the thing that matters is you look at things that matters, family, kids, you go for a walk, you try to, decompress. What sucks about our job or as sports bettors, is we don't have too many people that we can relate to. So if I lose, let's say $20,000 in a game, I can't go to my cousin who I hang out with and tell him about it.
Yeah.
Because, like, he can't even relate to that. He's like, are you crazy betting $20,000 on a game? Like, even my wife, she understands that I gamble for a lot, but even she can't really relate to what's going on. So that's the part that's really tough. You got to find other people that you can relate this stuff with.
I totally get that.
It is very difficult.
It's very challenging when your friend group around you they just don't get it. Or there's still a negative stigma on betting too. So when you tell somebody, I lost 10K on this game, they're like, are you crazy? Like you're betting,
they're like, that's vacation for the year.
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
but they start relating it to real money.
Which it should be viewed as, but I know it's tough. Really funny. I can really resonate with your story about the Pinnacle traders going home unhappy. Like, I'm in the content space now, right? We obviously do this podcast, but I give out picks publicly. I sweat those games so much harder. Sometimes there'll be such a small bet because sometimes I'll give out a pick early in the week and we bet it, but we can't get the full fill at that time in the week. And I'll bet something on Friday where there's much higher limits. And like the Friday bets are bigger bets, but I gave out one publicly and I could have a winning week, like a very good winning week, but lose a public bet. And it eats away at me because obviously there's perception and reality and people only see what you give out publicly. That really struck with me, like resonated with me.
Actually,
well,
yeah.
I promise Rob is a big winner for people who have doubts. Don't worry.
Appreciate that.
Wow. How much he pay you for that?
Yeah.
Antonino?
Zero. But
don't check my crypto wallet records or anything. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know Rob very well, but I suspect that he's a big winner because I suspect I see lots of his bets.
Yeah. So this came up in the last Q&A we did, but someone asked, "Oh, Rob, like what percentage of your bets go through like the legal regulated markets?" I'm like, I have no idea. Because I send out an order to get filled. I have no idea who it's going to. The guys who are saying, yeah, I can get you this bet are probably passing it off to 4 or 5 different people.
A lot of the times when you're talking about, which, like, I don't know, the other day there was a London game and you on Twitter says, wouldn't be a London game if I didn't bet on it. Like you were rooting, I forget which team it was. But
Baltimore against Tennessee was yeah.
But whenever you're rooting for something publicly, I'm always rooting for those same bets because they're in my accounts. Okay. So,
there we go.
This is a small world.
Of course. Closing the circle. I went through our Twitter DMs from years ago, and you sent me a message 2 years ago saying, hey, Rob, did BetStamp ever consider tracking instead of the closing line of the game, the line about 15 to 20 minutes before the game starts, game starts, instead of the line right at the game start? Walk me through that and why you think that might be more valuable.
So just so everybody knows, when I bet basketball, I'm betting a model that I'm telling a closing line to it. That's like my form of truth. I personally, for my model, I use the closing line 15 minutes before the actual game starts.
You think there's manipulation after? Is this the reason?
No, my belief is that there's a lot of traders who, in that last 15 minutes, because I've seen it, with my own eyes, there's a lot of traders that use those 15 minutes to fix all the mistakes they've done throughout the day. So they will move the game in ways they normally wouldn't move it based on their position and based on mistakes they had made earlier of the day. So I personally think that the closing line is maybe more effective 15 to 30 minutes before the game begins than it actually begins. Also, there's times where right at post, a big whale comes in and does a max wager on Pinnacle, the line will move 6 cents or 5 cents, whatever it is. And that really require, also if the trader wants to sell that position, he's going to move it more aggressively at the end because he has less time of taking a bet on the other side. So maybe if you would have gotten that bet an hour ago, maybe you barely move it. But now, because there's only 3 or 4 minutes left, I'm going to move it more because I actually want to sell this bet off. Because for whatever reason, the guy bet the same side that I liked or whatever, and it's, you just have to be careful with that.
So has anyone ever done that analysis there?
I have for the hockey market. And this is, I went back and forth on DMs with Antonino, but I believe that the hockey number is more efficient half an hour before game start than the actual closing price. Loglocks was better when I ran this.
For how long sample?
Very large. I also think, so my belief was the whales side of thing. And
max whale 10 unit.
Well, so I noticed this in hockey one season where, I'm messaging my movers. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Do you know who's betting these games? And they're like, no, we don't know. We don't know what's going on here. But it was the same teams every night that were getting bet. It was, Tampa Bay Lightning, New York Islanders, whatever. And I'm like, what the hell is going on where it's the same teams for half a season that are moving like 20 cents right before post? Like, what's going on here? And what I determined, this is a working theory in my head, but they were always moving on the Russian goalies. Okay? whoever was a Russian goalie, Vasilevsky,
Shesterkin,
Varlamov,
Sorokin.
whatever. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. All the Russian goalies, and I convinced myself there's like a Russian whale out there that's just betting the Russian goalies every game, and we would literally not even bet those games in the morning if we had an edge on the opposite side, because we knew we were going to get a better price right at post on those games. So like we learned it. But sorry, Antonino, to cut you off. I just experienced that myself, which is why I found it extremely interesting when you messaged me that.
At Pinnacle, we did analysis on a huge sample on most American sports, and the close was more efficient, 15, 20 minutes before than the at close. And something that people need to understand is you're a trader trading some sport. You have a directive from your boss. He's telling you, please don't risk more than 3 times the max wager on any game, right? If you have that directive and you're not a trader that wants to stick up for himself and cares that much, you're going to follow that directive. Now, there's traders like Antonino De Rosa who ignore those directives, but then there's traders, there's no upside, right? When you win a lot, nobody comes knocking on your door and say, great job, buddy, you won us a lot of money. When you lose, you'll get the phone call. Why did you lose so much? So, it's a lot of times people are just doing things to keep their bosses happy, even though it's the wrong move.
Interesting.
Well, hey, at the end of the day, I respect that, though, because from a company directive, they've probably put those rules in place as just like a protection. So if you're an employee, I completely understand. Like, you're not going to want to do that. And even though you may think it's a negative EV bet that you're taking for the house, it's overall positive EV for you because you're not getting a phone call if you fuck up. So I don't see how we can even blame these guys.
Yeah, we had this directive at Pinnacle. Like when I worked there, it was unless there's a really strong reason to have a bigger than a 3x position your max bet, on any game, don't do it. And I always kind of just did what I thought was right, as long as I could explain why I was doing something, And I never really got in trouble. Sometimes they would ask me why I did what I did, and I would explain it. But as long as you're, winning and they see that you're trying to, you were not getting in trouble or anything. But you do have those type of directives.
When you say 3x position on max bet, let's say max bet on Penny is 20K, for example.
Yeah.
And let's say, so this would be, you can't take more than a net losing position of 60 on either side.
Correct. Yeah.
Net losing.
Yeah, 60,000 of them losing more than that.
What about if it was like a big dog?
Oh, no.
Base
Like
amount?
they use base amount.
Okay, so you couldn't take more than a 3x net losing position on base.
Yeah, and but if I had 5 sharps on one side and no sharps on the other side, if that 3 became 6, nobody cared.
Fair enough. That's awesome.
Were you still at Pinnacle in 2017?
Yes, I left in 2018.
Okay. I want to ask you about Mayweather McGregor. It's just if you have any knowledge, because I was still consulting for a book at that time. There was an absurd amount of money on McGregor in that fight at the books, to the point where there was basically needed to get approval from the board of directors to say we're comfortable with this amount of risk. So when you talk about the 3x scenario,
in those scenarios, obviously they risk a lot more. And but you do have to, if I'm the boxing guy, I will go talk to my boss and say, hey, this is opportunity to make tons of money. Let's, be more, let's risk more. Or for instance, I don't know, remember when Trump won the election? Yep. That was probably one of the biggest losing day for every sports book in the world. And a lot of sportsbooks lost way more than that 3x because there was not a price that people were not betting Trump. So, I'm pretty sure that event, and when the Patriots came back in the Super Bowl against the Falcons in live, those were the 2 biggest losing events for sportsbooks in recent history.
Yeah, those are some tough ones. Listen, I'm not scared. I live my life very openly. I lost a lot of money on Hillary Clinton. I thought there's no way Donald Trump is going to win presidency. I'll never bet politics again.
I had a big bet on minus 800, no overtime in that Super Bowl. And when that went to OT, I was like, fuck this. I'm never doing this again. I can't believe it was the first Super Bowl it was the only Super Bowl to ever go to OT.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's it. I'm done with this. I can't believe it.
at 28-3. Oh God.
The Hillary thing, the Hillary Trump thing is something that makes me think about it now. It's a lot of times you're in a sports book and you're with very like thinking individuals. So none of us thought that there would be any chance that Hillary could lose. And then, you're on social media, but you only follow your Facebook friends and people that kind of think like you, right?
Yep.
So, and they're all thinking like, no way, Hillary loses. So we had all this group thing together, but we didn't realize there's like a big portion of the population that do nothing like us. And they're big fans of Trump, but that never crossed our mind,
I also I'll present an alternate theory as well. I think there's a lot of people who think more right wing, but don't want to publicly admit that they do. So a lot of the polling that happens around election and whatever, people just don't want there's some sort of stigma associated with some right wing politics. I'm very like neutral in my political beliefs, right? Like if it makes sense to me and it's a left wing thing, sure, if it's right. But that to me was like, in hindsight, it's just like idiotic that I would do something like that, like just completely idiotic. But that was my take away from that. It's just like, yeah, all the run up to everything was, yeah, okay, Clinton's going to win in a landslide, Hillary's going to win, Trump has no chance. But there are so many people out there that maybe even tweeted that they would like not support Trump that definitely voted for Trump. Antonino, you've been very gracious with your time today. Really appreciate everything. As someone who listens to Circles Off and has listened to episodes in the past, you probably know what we're getting to here with the final couple questions. But for those who are new here, we do ask same couple questions at the end for every single guest. So we'll start with our plus EV, minus EV. It doesn't have to be related to sports betting. It can be if you want. Totally up to you.
I got good ones. I've been thinking about it.
Okay, I love this. Plus EV, minus EV. Sure, go for it.
All right. So for minus EV, I have 2 little kids. Going out to restaurants is a no-no. Every time I do it, I always think that it's going to be okay. You make your meal is miserable. Your neighbor's meal is miserable. The waitress is not happy. So if you have little kids, just take out food and don't eat at the restaurant.
I don't have kids. I'm going to come off as like a real asshole here. But I hate going to like a restaurant and there's like a kid crying in the corner. And like,
you're not going to the right restaurants, buddy.
Well, even some upscale. Sometimes people don't get sitters. Like they just think it's.
You're going Applebee's.
You know what? You get what you get. Applebee's, I have no problem with that. Whatever. You know where I like to dine.
If you're going to the keg and you're seeing yeah, okay, it's tough. It happens.
It's tough. All right, next one.
Plus EV. I recommend people spend their money on experiences and not material things. Most of my best memories are doing fun things and exciting things and new things and not buying the fancy new shiny toy. So I try to live my life like that a bit.
Okay, Antonino, if you could go back 5 years and talk to a previous version of yourself, what advice would you give to your former self?
Take a leap and trust people. I think that I learned working in this business that most people are actually, there is a lot of scumbags, but most people are not scumbags. So taking leap of faiths and trusting in people until they screw you, you live a better stress-free life and, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I like that answer. I just only laugh at it because I think if you were to poll every guest in Circles Off history and be like, what percentage of bettors do you think are scumbags? And scumbags is very loosely defined. The range of answers you're going to get there is extremely wide.
Yeah, but some people consider like this guy's a scumbag because he like steam chased a game on Injury News, and then he does that. Like, and some people think a guy's a scumbag is a guy who stiffed his friends 100,000.
There's all sorts of levels of scumbags as well. Like G Stack George, who's George Silfides, who does stuff for 90 Degrees here on the Circles Off channel. He's the type of guy that's going to, he bets against the Lakers and LeBron James goes down with a knee injury, he's going to be fist pumping. Like, to me, that's a scumbag move, right? If I bet against the Chiefs and Mahomes gets hurt, tears his ACL, like I don't want that to happen. for me to win my bet. So
I'm the guy going to live bet the Raiders as soon as Mahomes gets injured.
Right.
No, I'm not selling, but it's someone's going to do it.
Thing, for me, that's not my immediate reaction. So there's level of scumbag. There's a level of scumbag.
Yeah, my thing was more like, partnering with people and trusting in people. We get stiffed a lot, but we've also find for every person that stiff us, we find 10 people that will never stiff us. So taking that, that trust is a good way to live your life, I think.
Did you catch that, Johnny? We get stiffed a lot. Came on a program with two Canadian hosts and tried to mix in some Canadian talk right at the end there.
That's more Italian roots.
It is. It's a combo of both. Yeah, talking with your hands. We didn't see your hands for a whole lot of this, Antonino. For those of you who don't follow him on Twitter, do so at DeRosa_Antonino on Twitter. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. If you did enjoy this episode here on Circles Off, make sure you smash that like button down below. If you're not subscribed, click that subscribe button. We do great interviews like this. Me and Johnny do Q&As. I also do some educational content. There's tons here on Circles Off. Appreciate everyone who supports us. Until next time, this has been another episode of Circles Off. Everyone enjoy your week. We'll catch you next one.